want to introduce you to Lieutenant Colonel, retired, and Special Forces Green Beret, Doc Pete Chambers. He's a decorated U.S. Army veteran whose remarkable 39-year military career includes service in the active duty reserves and the National Guard. He began his service as an enlisted infantryman and became a senior Green Beret officer and special operations flight surgeon. He honorably served in multiple overseas deployments. He's combat wounded, so he's a Purple Heart recipient. And he's also been awarded numerous awards, including the Bronze Star Medal, Meritorious Service Medal, and Combat Medical Badge. Doc began serving Texans in 1998 as a resident physician in primary care at Port Arthur, Texas. He entered back into active duty service after 9/11. He returned to Texas in 2015 to serve as a Green Beret, and then finally as a task force surgeon assigned to Operation Lone Star down on the border. He entered the national spotlight after he stood up to the unlawful orders imposed upon 6,000 Texas Guardsmen by the DOD and by the Texas Military Department. He entered the national spotlight when Senator Ron Johnson, yay for Senator Ron Johnson, named him as one of the 4 DOD whistleblowers who exposed the dangers of the unlawfully mandated vaccine, going on to testify as a fact witness in the landmark Navy SEALs versus DOD case, at which the SEALs prevailed. Thank God. Doc Pete's courage and leadership under pressure helped reaffirm and protect the religious exemption rights of all U.S. servicemen. My adopted-in grandson, Isaiah Snodgrass, was one of those members of the Marines that was able to get a religious exemption. Thank God for it. That action resulted, Doc Pete's action resulted in his being ostracized by the Texas Military Department and the loss of his position as the OLS task force surgeon. Following his untimely retirement from the Texas Army National Guard, Doc Pete founded and currently serves as president of the Remnant Ministry Texas, an association of ministries that specializes in disaster relief and counter human trafficking. Of recent note, the Remnant Ministry has been involved in operations in Western North Carolina post-Hurricane Helene, the fires in North Texas, and the flooding along the Guadalupe corridor. Doc Pete is the quintessential warrior diplomat. He is running for governor in the great state of Texas, and I love this, I love this, to bring a servant's heart ethos to Texan leadership, and we're going to address that, Doc Pete, here before you leave. If you spend any time with him, you will find him to be a decisive man of action, and he regularly says, have you seen the fences in Texas? They are not made for sitting on. They're barbed wire. Doc Pete is a champion of truth, transparency, and bold action to restore Texas as a stronghold of liberty. To quote Doc Pete, when asked his response to why he is running for the position of senior public servant, and I love that title, senior public servant in Texas, which is the governor, his response is, it is the natural progression of a godly man to see injustice and take a stand. Everybody welcome Doc Pete Chambers, candidate for governor.
All right. I'm going to throw this out there. I'm not from here, but it's good to be home, right? The center of gravity for much of this, in my career, center of gravity when I was an enlisted guy was I carried a rifle and dug ditches. There was nothing fancy about my job. And center of gravity was just staying alive for an individual young soldier. But then I got out of the military and went to college and medical school. My dad was a doctor, a family doctor, served in World War II, and taught me everything. He wasn't from this nation either. He was, from another country in Europe, and but he taught me how to be a patriot because he knew what I knew when he came here legally, by the way, uh, and he spent a lot of years until he got his citizenship. Worked as an orderly in the hospital, and they sent him to medical school up in Missouri, where I was born. Doesn't make me a carpetbagger, by the way. I was a baby. I have no choice where I was born, but it's still a show me state. But I learned that we have to give back, that there's a servant's heart. I rode around with him in the truck and carried a little black bag for him. We'd go on weekends to houses and trade for some preserves, or we would get it's emotional. I lost my dad not too long ago, but we'd get half a hog, or we would trade for something, or somebody come and work in our yard to help us, and they were probably illegal. But, but they're humans. And so the thing that my dad taught me about it is that where your heart is where your home is. Right? I've lived in 53 other countries in this world because I had a war uniform, protecting a lot of other borders. And in 2015, when I came home, I protected this border, right, south of us, Rio Grande, 1,254 miles of it. Started in McAllen with 600 soldiers, ended up at 10,000 soldiers, but I got booted out of there before that because I told the truth. I'll do a little ad lib acting up here for you and explain the actual meeting that took place between me and the current commander-in-chief's two-star, but that's another story. But because I'm not going to bellyache, I'll just tell the truth. But the center of gravity is people, right? It's us. It's us. It's the relationship. That's why when I come up, I don't have any plan how to talk. I just say, Lord, just let me see their hearts, and then I'll know what to say because the Holy Spirit will come in. And so that's what I do. And so it's people. It's the center of gravity for politicians, and by the very nature of the word politician, right? That's a word that was created by Aristotle. And the polis was a city state, and then when you add that backside to it, it's adding action to what the people of the city state want. So most politicians fail at the very definition of the word. But I never wanted to be that. I left the military. I had 48 Longhorn Evans from Corianis that I was going to raise and just retire and be like, the Secondhand Lions. You ever seen that movie? Right? So I was going to be that old guy on the porch and just raise those and be by myself. I had a beautiful ex-wife who I loved to death, but she put up with 20 years of war and it was hard. So we split when I was at Fort Bragg. And she went home she's a family doctor on the north side of the Red River. Still love her to death. Beautiful children together. But that center of gravity, what I learned as being a guy that was in uniform who got to see a little bit behind the curtain of politics of, when they would send me up to Capitol Hill and Colonel, you get some rank now, you get to go up and talk to people, and you're in the speaker's office and the speaker of the House, and you're looking at the Washington Monument, and you're watching behind the curtain, and you're seeing that what's happening here is there's a lot of cowards that take on the name of politician. And there are people that are traitors that take on the name. And I'm not going to name names, but I'm going to say I saw things that broke my heart. And when they offered me to take a job as a congressman at the time, I said, I will never go back to D.C. in my life. I thought when I'm leaving, I'm going to turn the mirror up in case there's a Sodom and Gomorrah event. I don't want to be turned into a pillar of salt. But honestly, never dreamt it in my wildest dream, but I had those cattle. I was going to just do that. And then like that movie Gladiator where Maximus comes to general or to king or emperor, and he says, I got one more mission for you. So I want you to do this. And he says, I want you to go give the republic back to the people. Okay. So I got another mission. And so the other mission is, I took off that uniform and I put on the uniform of God and went back to the border and looked to find God's most precious that are missing. 500,000 kids are missing from that border. Unaccompanied minors. Work with Terry Rodas, some other people that we are all in a big group in the nation, and we try to do the best we can to find these kids, because that is, if you ever look in the eyes of a child that you've just rescued, that's where you see heaven on earth. When they grab your leg and they know they're safe. The last two were 8 and 7, and they know they're safe. That is heaven on earth right there. That's where it happens. That's why the center of gravity must be that, because we're a triune being, a spirit, a soul, and a body. And if you don't operate in the triune, you're what we call in the military combat ineffective, because the combat comes in principalities or rulers of darkness. You know, there's a letter that I read once, and it was written on the 24th of February, 1836, and it says, to all Texans, to Texans and all Americans in the world, fellow citizens and compatriots, we are besieged on all sides. Let's change and add in by forces of tyranny, darkness, rulers of darkness, evil. Okay, we're besieged on all sides. So if we don't operate in that spiritual realm, how can we then say, well, yes, I follow Jesus and I know the Holy Spirit, and that's okay. And some people are, look, I came on this later in life, but when I saw it, I could not see it. And I have to operate that way. So that servant's heart that comes through, that's only because I read the book. Because it didn't take me to take a red pill to understand what was going on. It took me, I should have my Bible in here, sorry. It took me reading the red letters. I was red lettered. When I really read that and understood it, I was like, okay, so my three parts now, my spirit is in tune to the commander's voice. My spirit is in tune. And the commander has a commander intent, and it's in that book. And in that book, it says to evangelize to the utmost, but it also says to protect the widows and the children. It also says to protect those that are oppressed. And it so happens that my unit in Special Forces, the Green Berets, the Latin term for our motto is De Oppresso Liber, to free the oppressed. Now, I'm going to match that up with the current job position that I'm looking at. Because we got a history of the past. We know what my job was. I came in under Ronald Reagan. I got out under Brandon. Sorry, I didn't mean to go there. I'm just kidding. I served in a lot of different capacities, but truly, when you grow up in a place where, you know, we had horses, and my job was to take care of them. Worst jobs in the world in the very beginning, but then you get to do the cool stuff. But it's to make a hand, right? To make a hand. That's what you just have to do. And I'll tell people, I'm not a rancher, but I'm a pretty decent hand. Okay. But then I go in the military, and then I've got to do close quarter battle. Throw a flashbang in a room, kick a door, go right, go left, meet with, close with, and destroy the enemy in training and for real. So then you look for work at that point. That's called looking for work, right? So I move on to the next job, and I'm down there on the border, and I'm to protect those soldiers, because that was my job description, task force surgeon, protect the soldiers against whatever disease process, against anything that could harm them. Okay, protect the soldiers. And then the general comes to me, and now I'm going to ad-lib a little bit, and here's the general, 36th Infantry Division, 2-star, and I'm just a lieutenant colonel, right, rank-wise. Comes in, Chambers, Texas looks terrible. What's going on, sir? He said, why aren't you giving the soldiers the shots? I said, because they're not taking them. They have an informed consent. Here's the Army regulation, blah, 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 blah. I told him, this is him. He said, it ain't about the science, Doc. It's about the policy. And I looked at the scales that were over his eyes, and I looked at it and said, but sir, what you're asking me to do, to recuse myself from doing informed consents, and there was a 1-star general standing behind him, and another colonel, a bird colonel, standing over there. So when I look at leaders and I judge them, it's like looking at, we don't judge the person, we look at the fruits of the Spirit. So when I look at the fruits of the Spirit of a person, I look at the character. And I had to learn these things as a young man. My drill sergeant, Vietnam vet, all of them. And they'd say, don't be a character, have character. They're simple things, but they stick in your head to this very day. I still remember just about every word that they said in 3 September 1983 when I walked into Fort Benning and became a soldier. I still remember every word. At 18 years old, they put me in charge of a company as a trainee. And here I am leading. I'm smaller than all these guys, and they're, I don't even know how to march people yet. But I look at leaders and I go, okay, is this person willing to be responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen? And if it doesn't happen, the leader takes the blame. And if it does happen, the troops get the credit. That's how winning is done. Because all of that stuff trickles down as a leader to the lower echelon. The units that I was in, the highest esprit de corps, the honor, prestige, and the esprit de corps of the Ranger Regiment and the Green Berets, the reason it's so hard to get into is because it takes that and whittles out to that character, right? Not the biggest and the baddest dude. It's the character. It's this heart. It's this center of gravity that you want. Yes, we got to run through a door sometimes. Yes, we do have to get in hand-to-hand combat sometimes. Yeah, those are things that are requirements. But this right here and this right here, I can't train that. I can't train that. They've got to have it. That's why there's a selection process. So when I lose my job on the border and I get out, and this is not going to be the pity party, but you got to understand that this happened to me as a senior ranking officer in the military, what did he do to the rest of them, right? What did he do to Marines right here that you got a waiver. And God bless that you got it. But a lot of people didn't. I've had friends in the military enlisted that were court-martialed because they wouldn't take a shot and lost their careers. 17 years in, a lieutenant down there in San Antonio. He was enlisted and then became a lieutenant. 17 years in the military, they court-martialed him. He had 3 more years to retire. For me, Texas Military Department, I love all the people I worked with, but the leadership that I dealt with wouldn't listen to me. I went all the way to the top, to the governor's office. I went to congressmen in the state of Texas. I went to numerous congressmen in the state of Texas. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Even a SEAL out of Houston wouldn't talk to a Green Beret. The task force surgeon for Operation Lone Star, 6,000 sons or daughters in Texas. Nobody wants to listen. I'm like, but I've got the information. Okay, go to the governor's office. We're not talking about it. All right, so they boot me out, not out of the military, but off that job, and told me they're going to put me in a closet somewhere doing physicals. And I'm a guy that used to jump out of planes with Green Berets, and you're going to put me in a closet doing physicals. Now I'm getting out. So I did. I had 39 years total, now 20 good years, but I finally got my 20 good years, got out. And something happened. There was a snafu with my pay. So I didn't get my retirement pay for 2 years after I left the Texas Military Department. If they're going to do that to me, what are they going to do to the other ones? It finally came this last year. I finally got it. For 2 years, I lived on just disability alone. So I'm 100% service connected, shot and blown up. That's not what we do to our Americans. It's not what we do to Texans. So the leadership is broken. Okay, and the world has changed. Meanwhile, the world has changed sometimes for the worse, sometimes for the better. But in many ways, it's a lot tougher to lead, because it requires you not to be coerced or to change by one of these 4 things. Just remember this acronym, because it's a good test when you want to see what's right and wrong with people. I used it when I would interview people in Guantanamo Bay. Money, ideologies, MICE, M-I-C-E, money, ideology, coercion. They've done something, we got a picture of it, and ego. We all have an ego, right? But I've learned to exude confidence and demonstrate competence as an officer, because sometimes that comes across as ego. All I have to do is exude confidence. You've got to understand that this commander is going to stand in the gap for you. I'm going to interpose. If you ever read Mark Troihella's book, The Doctrine of Lesser Magistrates, it is our job at the lower level to interpose for those at the upper. For the citizens, I'm sorry. The upper should not have more power than those of us at the bottom, right? I'm a hands-off guy from the government standpoint. I'm a states' rights guy too, right? I believe in that. You can't create something and then be inferior to it. And it's just the history. It's just the way it was. So I read the job descriptions and I go to the next job. So I get out and I go on the border and I start chasing bad guys around for some ranchers down there to keep them off their property and not getting in gunfights, and showed them how to deny territory to ranchers down in Brackettville and Eagle Pass and all those areas. And I get to know a lot of great people. And then found out we had a ministry. Didn't know it, but we have a ministry, because ministry is life and life is ministry. And somebody told me that, and it's like, Doc, you have quite a ministry. It was a guy named Rick Joyner. He's a guy, preacher, right? More than a preacher, apostolic guy. But I didn't know who he was, and he was telling me, he's listening to my story. He's like, you have ministry. I said, no, I'm not a minister. He said, no, it's apostolic. I said, no, I don't even know what that means. But I learned, right? It's not that I'm apostolic. It's the way that's presented. People listen to me that are, the grunts out there, the soldiers out there. And we're out in the field doing this during the floods in the Guadalupe, sitting there on the tailgate, just having a church service, or just having a service, or just praying for people, right? That's the ministry, because ministry is life and life is ministry, everything we do. So you look at the next job description. Well, a bunch of folks over in Bonham, who I love dearly, sat me down at Pentecost, the day of Pentecost. We were having a bonfire in Bonham. And they said, the reason we got you here, Doc, brought you up from Wimberley, because I'm working out of Wimberley, Hill Country. It's a beautiful place. If we want you to consider running for governor of the state of Texas. Oh, no. Oh, no. No. I don't do politics. I'm going to, I was going to retire and raise cattle. I had to sell all them because I didn't have any money coming in. So I sold the cattle. We'll get it back again one day. But no, not doing politics. Okay, well, just pray about it. Okay, I'll pray about it. That's the right thing to do. We should pray before you make a huge decision. And I remember Lara Logan, when I got on her show, and she said, you're taking something on that's completely crazy. You know this. I said, yeah, just crazy enough. Like doing 20 years of jumping out of planes. It's just crazy enough to get to the objective. And what's the objective in this? To free the oppressed. Right. That's what I heard. That's what I perceived. That's what I understood. So for a week when I prayed, it was, Doc, Pete, perceived. I didn't hear a booming voice. You're going to continue to free the oppressed from tyranny. That's what you're going to do. I was hoping for just a big no, Lord. I said, no, it didn't happen. Okay. So I came back to the group and I said, I'll consider it and we'll do a feasibility study. So I'll call Alan West and I'll call Chad Prather. And I'll call Don Huffines. I'll say, what are your experiences, sir? And what are the pitfalls? What are the this and that? And every one of them said, you need to do it. I thought that maybe one of them would say no. Alan West was just jumping into Normandy on a reenactment, and he was on the ground, and he had picked up his phone anyway. And he said, Doc, what's going on? And we're buddies, military guys. We know each other. Well, what do you think about me running for governor? Yeah, do it. I got to go. Okay. Call all these folks to do that. I called General Flynn. And he sat down really most time with me. We worked together in different projects in the past, and he said, you have to do it. You have to do it. Because the politics hasn't changed. In many ways, it's gotten worse, but in many ways, it's just stayed the same. And the leadership, whether you like them or not, is tired. Because it's been the same thing for a long time, but the world has changed so drastically that's what's matching that status quo. I'm not going to bellyache or throw mud at anybody, but I'll tell you that the status quo isn't going to work in the dangerous environment that we're in. And I'm a glasses half full guy, and it's my job so that you can go to bed at night, unless you carry a weapon and you follow me, you can go to bed at night and sleep and know that you're safe and that your family's safe and that your children are safe and that your grandchildren are going to be safe. Because for me, that's my job, is to provide that safety. Because somebody that stands on a wall, like my gentleman over there, Mike, that works with me, I met him in Ramadi, Iraq in 2004. We know what it's like to stand on a wall and to guard that wall, to guard everything within the limits of our post. Right? That's a general order. We know what it's like to do that. And when you don't do it right, there are body bags involved. Sometimes Murphy shows up and you have no choice. But it's a very difficult environment. But in this world, my job is to provide that security, that base of security. And then the economic security can come in. But we've got to make sure that we're safe, Texas. We've got to make sure that whatever's here, I'm not going to name everyone. We'll have some time for some questions here in a minute. I'm going to try to close this out here and we'll have some questions because I like the interaction. We'll talk about all the things, Colony Ridge, the Epic City, all the things that are coming in there trying to take and subvert and to bring in communism, to bring in Marxism, to bring in Sharia, and to bring all these attacks, the attack vectors, many of which are evil. So that is what I'm here for. That is it. And so I'll be willing to take some questions. I think we'll go because it's important.
I'm Shannon Wolf, and I'm a precinct chair. And I want to say thank you so much for listening to the Lord. Thank you. My question is about where you were talking about tyranny. I think one of the ways I see it showing up is in property taxes.
Yeah.
We don't own what we own. What is your stance on that?
Well, completely unconstitutional, both in the state and the federal level, in the way I read the constitutions, right? The way I read it. But I understand the system that we're in. But the system is a matrix and was designed to, as Bastiat said, the law we were talking about in the hallway. Great book. It's more of a treatise, but it's a small book. The Law, written after the French Revolution. The purpose, I'm going to summarize the whole book, is the purpose of the legislator is to unlawfully plunder the workers. I'm just paraphrasing it, but that's true. Okay, so, but we can get beyond that. So there's been some damage, and there's whatever percent rise in taxes that we've had over the last 2-3 terms of governorship. But it's not just the governor. Here's an example. When you declare an emergency in a county can raise the tax 8%. That's just the way it is, right? But there are some times when that's taken advantage of, and it's abused. And when you have, I think, I don't know where we're at now, but we've had 120 counties put into emergency declaration over the past 6 months, roughly. You can Google me right now and tell me I'm wrong, but I'm somewhere in there. I'm pretty close to being right. And 4 counties, when we were down there in the Guadalupe, before we even got off of it, one of the counties was already talking about raising the taxes, because, as Rahm Emanuel said, you never let a disaster go to waste, right? Right? This is a tactic. But if you don't pull that emergency declaration off quick enough, people suffer. Okay, now I get school tax. We can have that argument all day long. We can talk about the insolvency of school bonds, and we can talk about all these things that are problem sets that are 1,000-meter targets. But right now, the middle class in Texas is being taxed to death. And it's hard for young people, because I live in a trailer park. It's true, I do. That's where our compound is, so we can go do counter human trafficking. We just got them from a mission last night, 17-hour drive back. But what I've seen is young couples living in trailer parks because they can't afford a home and the taxes. It's wrong. There's no American dream there. That's what my dad told me you're going to serve in this country for, because he had that dream and he was able to achieve it. Right? Married a gal from U.S. and they had the American dream. But that's where I stand with it. So for me, it's dissolution completely. That's the goal. That's my end state. But you can't do it in the first term. You can't do it in the first day with an executive order. But you can take it seriously, and you can force the function. And this is how the citizens take their power back. If you ever heard of I believe it's 391 Commission. A 391 Commission is a piece of Texas law that was what stopped Rick Perry from creating the Trans-Texas Corridor. A bunch of citizens got together in contiguous counties and said, we don't want this. And the citizens stopped it. The citizens at the county level, county commissioners, citizens. So me as a governor, what's my job? Commander-in-Chief, I read the job description. I'm responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen with regard to the budget, and then numerous other tasks to include nominating people for different positions and things like that. Very important job, by the way, which requires, in my opinion, honest opinion, staying away from good old boy networks, right? My good old boy network is right there, right? People like that. People like the veterans in this room. That's my good old boy network. I don't know any billionaires in Texas. I've met them. I've talked to them. I took some bodies to them during the floods, right? It's a terrible job. But we got to get away from that network, because that network is drowning us. Every one of us, our whole economy is drowning in that, because the money's upside down, Texas. And if we were to call the marker on some of these bonds, we'd be broke. And it's just, we got to be careful with that. So that's my intent, but there is a way to do it. And I've got 5 different plans we're working on, and some people are mad at me because this group says this works and this group says this works. It doesn't matter. I'm a commander. All I have to do is say task force. I'm allowed to do that as a Texan, as a governor, I'm sorry, as a senior public servant, and say, all right, task force. No lobbyists on the task force, no special interests, no former governors. Sorry, Rick, I like you. I've actually, met him. Seems like a decent guy. But here's the deal. None of that. The task force is made up of citizens, the smartest and the brightest, to tell me in the tax task force, give me the 5 plans. Let's narrow it down to 3. Let's fuse them together, whether it's a VAT tax or or a limited sales tax or a combination thereof. But we've got to do it wisely to bring it down to nothing, or as close as we can. We still got to talk about school taxes, but that's another thing. I would probably, if you're a homeschooler, I probably wouldn't tax you for school taxes. If you're over the age of 65 or you don't have kids in school anymore, I probably wouldn't tax you for school taxes, right? Be common sense. You guys, I haven't said this, but I've said it on a couple shows, is there's this bell curve, right? You got the far right and you got the far left. And you got those people you'll never convince anything, even over what I believe in sometimes, right? And the far left you'll never convince, but there's a bell curve in the middle, which is kind of the common sense folks, right? We do our taxes, we serve in the military, we go to church, or we don't go to church, doesn't matter. Sometimes church for me is not my pickup. But there's a common sense party, right? It exists. It exists. So, all right, next question. I'm sorry.
Thanks for your service. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're worth it.
There's all the national news about the move to reduce the size of the federal government. So what are your thoughts on how to reduce the size of the state government?
Absolutely. Great question. So the first thing I would do is take the 1,207 school districts and whittle it down to a lot less, because that's where 80% of your administrative costs for schools. That's a lot of the reason why school teachers don't make great money and then don't stay and they want to go to private schools. That is a problem set, but you've got to, I know Don Huffines is talking about a Doge. That's accountability type stuff. I'm all about it. That's great. You're the commissioner to do that. But for me, it starts with the overreach. So we got to pull back. And that is, in some respects, as I read the job description, the job of the governor is to control that. Now, I understand the lieutenant governor has more legislative power and can rein in the cats on the 2 bodies. But I believe that those 2 people should probably work better together than they have been. I don't see a reason for bickering between a lieutenant governor and a governor. We don't want to, as I had this conversation earlier, to get into a Hegelian dialectic, right, to where emotions come out. I wasn't issued emotions. I'll talk very firmly, but I wasn't issued them. So we won't get into the dialectics. We will have clear, concise dialogue, and we'll make things happen, policies that happen that y'all have done, and I thank you for that with regard to many things I'm watching y'all do, and I've heard about to be people of action, like real politicians, action. So that's the way we do it. But for me, we've got to let go of a little bit at the state level. The Texas Constitution, the preamble of the Texas Constitution, that we fall under an almighty God. That's a beautiful part to that. And that should never change. But the Texas Constitution is over 100,000 words long. The U.S. Constitution is 7,500 words. 100,000 words. So when I see that, just common sense, Pete Chambers, not a lawyer. I don't have JD behind my name, so I can't decipher a lot of this, what do you call it, legislative labyrinth that it's become. But what does that do? Well, it requires people that grow, that produce honey or have bees to have a license. That's not freedom. That's not freedom. We've got to get freedom back. So I would go like this. 3 movies. True Grit. Right? It's going to require true grit for us to get together and get this done. And you guys know what that is, because I see it. You got grit. Braveheart. We've got to unite the clans. We've got to unite the body. We've got to unite the ecclesia. We've got to unite. And then Gladiator. And then we've got to take the republic and give it back to the people. And so for me, that's what I believe is, if there's 100,000 words and we're just about, we're just about 900,000 too long. 90,000 too long. We probably should cut it down a little bit. There are things that we can probably cut some of that fat off and not have looming over the heads of citizens of Texas. But that requires people way smarter than we in the policy side of the house. But I know how to lead them, and we will. That will be a focus, is to whittle that down.
Thank you. My question is your earlier remark about the 1,207 school districts. How would you consolidate those?
Yeah, now the fire hose of which I am drinking from, which that's one, I am not an expert in school districts. I have opinions about school vouchers. I have opinions about the Blue Bonnet program. I have opinions about all these things. Is when I look at the numbers, when somebody presented it to me, one of the groups that's helping us, and said to me, you've got 1,207. How would we consolidate? Well, we'd look at, population size, density. We'd look at some counties that could probably come together so that we wouldn't have. So we could have closer to 250 districts versus that, or maybe 500, but not 1,200, because every time you have a superintendent, of some of which superintendents make nearly $500,000 a year. Me as a doctor, if I got out of the military, to do that, I was an ER doctor, so I would have to work probably 7 shifts a week to make that kind of money. It is a physician. Some of the, I think I've seen the ranges on superintendents between 300 and 500,000, all right, somewhere in there. And I don't begrudge that to someone, but I would say that if we want to cut the fat, we cut it back by creating less districts. And I don't have the answer completely on that one. I couldn't tell you, but I know that's the idea, that's the intent. So, yes, ma'am.
My question to you is, why is it taking so long, and what do we have to do to get prayer back into our schools? We need that. We need that very bad. And I know I'm checking you out on Google right now, and you're a godly man. I'm a godly woman. I'm helping raise a grandchild, and he's in a Christian school. And prayer is something that people take for granted. If you have a relationship with Jesus, he's going to hear every request that we have. So could you tell me where we would even begin? I would love to know.
Thank you. Good question. Actually, a great question. For me, this is just me, Pete Chambers. We are sovereign citizens in the kingdom of heaven, to the kingdom of heaven. That's the only. When I was asked once, why are you running and who's backing you? Where do you take your marching orders from? That's what I was asked by a strategist, this $500 million guy that put DeSantis in office and put some other big people in office. And I can't say his name, I promised I wouldn't, but he wanted me to get off this campaign. He asked me if I would and do something else. I said, I won't. Well, he said, who do you take your marching orders from? And I said, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Now, and that's true. That's as true as can be. But the guy that was sitting next to him, that was a deacon at his Baptist church, after throwing a few F-bombs at me and telling me, you're this crazy and you're that crazy. And he said, oh, so you're a Christian nationalist. And I looked at him and I said, at this dinner club in Houston, $20,000 a month membership, I looked at him and I said, sir, you're about to get on the fighting side of me. Okay, that wasn't a talking point, because that's what he said. Oh, that's a talking point. I said, no, sir. No, that's not a talking point. I live that, right? They're trying to get, and so this is going to answer the question, because and I'm not saying that the guy is evil, but what they're proposing to me is evil. If the citizens, if the grassroots want us to truly be the representative, then we shall. It's only by his will. Truly. But if it's my job to be a forcing function, to come in and say, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire, sir, because as the guy that was there during the COVID mission on the border and saw the optics versus reality to everything, working in the State Operations Center in Lamar Street, right there at DPS headquarters, watching these things being planned, what was coming for Texas with masks, what was coming for Texas with building bed space, and what was coming with regard to nasal swabs and shutting down the meatpacking industry. We live in sovereignty. So my answer to it is that we walk in the sovereignty that's given to us by our Creator. Because that is what the Constitution is based upon. And so we've got to believe it, so we walk in it, right? Which means tell your kid to go to school and pray. Stand in the corner of the room and just pray. And if they throw you out, then we'll have a case with them, right? But if they start winning that little battle, that little victory, right? Because what's happened to our nation, and this is very important to understand from a guy that does hostage rescue work or have in the past and still do, but it's not as cool anymore because we don't get to jump out of planes doing it. We can do it in a pickup truck, but the country is under Stockholm syndrome, and some of you may know what that is, and if you don't, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's being captured for so long and then being fed by your captor so that you rely on your captor, right? So now your captor has kept you alive. You've been fed so long. And the captor, here comes a knight in shining armor and says, okay, you're safe now. Let's go. Follow me if you want to live. But they go, I don't want to go. I want to stay with this captor. They've been feeding me. That's Stockholm syndrome. The nation is under that in many places, not in this church. Y'all are wide open. Not you at all. Stockholm syndrome. And the way to get away from it, I learned this while I was in the gulag, right? I was a captured dude in SEER, survival, evasion, escape, resistance and escape training. The way to get out of Stockholm syndrome is little victories. This is a little victory tonight. We're exercising freedom of speech. Praying in the back of the room is a little victory, right? Stopping on the side of the road and helping somebody. Stopping on Highway 35 at Denton when somebody's car is getting hijacked and stepping out and pulling out your weapon system to stop them from doing what they're doing when a mom and 2 kids are in it. I had to do that on Highway 35 North in Denton and watched a bunch of cars and people going like this with their phones. And I'm driving like, what is going on here? Come around it all, got out, went up, and said, sir, you better quit doing that. And he turned around, he had crashed his car and he was stopping traffic on 35. Not to tell the story that, oh, wow, that's a cool thing you did. No, we have a duty to protect those that can't protect themselves. Not every day are you going to be faced with some crazy scene on Highway 35. But we have a duty to walk in the sovereignty that is given to us by our God, our Lord and Savior. And that's really where I would push it. But as the I guess the senior public servant cheerleader to the state of Texas, I'd be like, all right, well, let's have a meeting today and we're going to talk to citizens of Texas. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to develop a 391 commission, and I want you citizens to put it to vote. And it doesn't matter what the legislature says. We're going to have prayer in school and let the citizens decide. I mean, there are many options. Just a thought.
I'm a cheerleader for the senior public servant. And I used to follow you during the Rona back in the day on Twitter. You were one of my best people that I followed until you got kicked off. But you went on to do many, many more heroic things after that. And I just want to salute you for that. Now, about the prayer in schools, my huge concern is Sharia creep. And which combined with Marxism, which you see a lot up in Dallas and Houston, huge. What can be done about that without, overstepping, legally I'm talking about, or what legal changes can be made?
We have to hold true to the fact that we are a Christian nation. All right? We're correct. And that's by no means is a snub to anybody else. But that's where we are. If you or I I've been there. Northwest Frontier Province of Pakistan. You go into Northwest Frontier Province of Pakistan and say, I'm going to set up a Baptist church right here. Guess what? Exactly. I had a great conversation with a warlord in the Northwest Frontier Province. It was just me and one other soldier. We had to get them to fight for us or try to. And he asked me, are you a Christian? I said, yeah. Through the interpreter, I didn't speak Pashtun, I spoke Farsi. And he said, I can kill you. I said, yes, you can. I said, but there's a drone this guy's going to kill all of us when you do that to me. I'm dedicated to be here. What about you? Right? Okay. He backed off. He said, oh, no, I'll kill you. I know I'll kill you. But the point is, they cannot import religion and or another law system under it, especially Sharia law. But we citizens cannot pay the taxes for schools that could possibly create terrorists. We cannot, because in those very hills of Pakistan are things called madrasas, and that's where they train the next future fighters. And we met them because we spent 20 years in Afghanistan, thinking we were going to be done in a year. 20 years going back and forth. And those kids that kept coming out of those schools and kept strapping bombs on and walking up to our guys in the street, and a mom would send them on in there to do it. Under that law, that's not a religion of peace. And I'm not saying that every sect of that religion is the same. I'm saying that if you spout that in our state, it will end. It has to end. And right now, money from taxpayers is still going to fund those schools. And we worry about, the Blue Bonnet program, which has 17 tenets of UNESCO on it anyway. Whole nother program, another problem set. But when we're talking about safety and security and allowing someone to create a former enemy, no bueno. Not on our watch. Good question. Sir.
So I want to add to what you were saying a minute ago about when you take your student and let them go in the back of the room and pray and just let them try to do something about it. I also want to make the point that we have a responsibility, all of us as adults, to do the best job that we can, to be the best that we can, to serve as if we're serving God in our secular job roles. And so that when there's an opportunity for us to pray with the student, because I'm the best teacher in the district, they're going to look the other way when I do that, right? They're not going to fire me because I prayed with a student. They're not going to fire me because I prayed in front of my class. And so, but that goes with doing your best as if you're working for God.
Thank you. That's a great rounding that out as well. It's going to take all of us. When we say unite the clans, it's unite the groups, it's unite the colors, it's unite all of us. It's we're not, these aren't catchphrases. This is real world stuff we're dealing with. And and the enemy knows, when I'm talking about the enemy in the spirit realm, the enemy knows that our power, so much power, comes through strength of prayer. Right? Prayer and petition, present your request to God, and the peace of God that transcends all understanding will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. Yeah, that prayer is the forefront. That's why that tool is trying to be taken away. Because you got to look at what the enemy's trying to do to say, we've got to counter that. So, thank you. Sir.
Yeah. Mark Lowry.
Yeah, Mark.
A lot of what you said has just resonated, I think, deeply with a lot of us here. You're clearly a sheepdog, and you know what we're talking there. I like it because you're a little bit of a disruptor. President Trump's a disruptor, and that's what we need. Our leaders in Texas have disappointed us. Abbott's disappointed us. Cornyn's disappointed us, and I can go down the list. They get there, and then they change. So, sir, if you get there, and you've resonated with us, if you get there, hang on to those principles that got you there, and for these people that will vote for you. Because when they get there, they change, and it's so hard. Their egos, their pride, their money, all that gets in the way. But let me comment on this school issue. I don't think we can get rid of 1,200 school districts. All transparency, my wife sits on the school board. But they're the largest organized crime syndicate in the state of Texas. And before you all get crazy, well, I'm surprised by that clap. This school district got $90 million of our money, and weak, feckless people to watch one person spend it. That's all over the state of Texas. And they're taking our money, and they're doing a terrible job raising our children. TASB and TEA, look at them when you get there. We got to have an inspector general that can look at these school districts, and when they're misappropriating our money or spending our money inappropriately, they need to go to jail for it. Because right now, nothing can be done to them. They're free to spend that bucket of money every year. But one more thing, just the people, you got it, and you got it, sir. You know that. You've been a leader. I can tell by that. Men will go to war with you. They'll walk through a gunfight with you. The citizens got to get up, and we got to get invigorated again. We got to get passionate. This small group here is nothing. We gotta get everybody.
Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands.
So
Yes, sir.
I'll
Thank you, brother.
I'm ready to go.
Well, this is, that's great. And I'm just going to answer real quick on the very first subject is, people ask you that. Well, what are you going to do when you get there? Are you going to change? I only know one thing, and I know how to follow leaders, and I know how to lead followers, right, in combat, in the real world, on the Guadalupe. A bunch, 4 or 5 of us went to Guadalupe day one on the 4th when we were going to kick off our campaign. It was going to be on a float in Lakeway doing this, and ended up at Hunt. But 4 of us ran 14,000 citizen response people. Now we ran 8 groups. We didn't run them. We did operational control, administrative control more or less. But the point is that we know how to lead. But I understand the principles of coercion and how people are bought. And so when I sat at that table with that guy that was offering me this and the remuneration that would come with it in the millions of dollars if I had decided to take that job, and everybody would wonder, why did that guy get out of the race? It ain't about money. I don't have any. I mean, I have enough to get by. Retirement, comfortable, right? But you can't buy me, and you can't coerce me. I'm a soldier. Yeah, I'm rough. That's right. I'm rough. But I maintain honor, prestige, and the esprit de corps throughout all of it. And so for me, my vow then today, and I hope somebody's taping this, is that, like Marcus Aurelius said, the Roman emperor, a good one, really wise, he had a man stand behind him to remind him, you're just a man. You're just a man. Because Roman emperors thought of themselves as gods many times. They were muy loco and cabeza. Right? But the principles that we fall under are so much greater in the kingdom of heaven. And so that's where I will maintain. Hopefully it's being taped, and hopefully somebody will, if I start coming off path, when y'all find me somewhere to say I want an appointment with the governor, and unless I'm doing lobbyist TV that day, you can come in and see me and remind me and go, you're just a man.
Hi, Doc. I have a 2-part question for you. The first part is, were you aware of issues and dangers in regards to vaccines before COVID, or was it COVID that opened your eyes to that? And then the second part of that question is, what is your commitment? Can you kind of elaborate on your commitment to medical freedom?
Great questions. I'll answer it really fast so we can keep moving fast. So number one, we will decentralize medicine in the state of Texas. Mary Talley Bowden will probably head that up for us. I was aware of autism. Didn't have that when I was in medical school. It wasn't a thing when I graduated in 1995. Nor was ADHD, nor was any of that stuff. We didn't have that. It wasn't a diagnosis. Those things came on later with the advent of multiple shots and vaccines. So we will also have a moratorium day one as an executive order, no mRNA products or vaccines or anything in the state of Texas. 0. Said that. I will also, if we can get the elements of a crime and we can prove them, and then we can put out a warrant for arrest for Fauci et al., all of them, and arrest them and bring them back to Texas. Because if they won't do it, the federal government, we will. But we have to, innocent until proven guilty, and then we find out the elements of crime. You got, a victim, you got a perpetrator, you got to show intent, right? So that's what we've got to be able to do. But there is a way to do that. That's the Attorney General's office, but I will prod that person into victory. Number 2 question.
Thank you for your past service.
Yes, ma'am.
And
You're
I'm
worth
looking
it.
forward to your future service. Many prayers. I think I won't be alone in praying for you. As
Thank
you
you.
mentioned, having that person behind you saying, reminding you you're a man, you're a man. Who are you gathering to be your team? You mentioned somebody already that's going to help with the medical, so forth. Who is the rest of your team? Because you've already been honest and transparent and said you don't know everything,
Right.
and you recognize other people that are expertise. Who
So
are those
I
people?
speak to people, and it's funny that you say that because I was at a meeting at a barbecue place. It's funny, they're always at barbecue places or churches, which is better. But when somebody stands up in the audience, they know what they're talking about. And they come up and, what are you going to do about this? And I said, well, you're passionate, aren't you? Yes, I am. All right, well, come over here on the side, put your name on this piece of paper, and we're going to call you when it's time for the task force. And I'll do what I learned, a little phrase I learned as a kid. Have them put their pecuniary wherewithal where their maxillary orifice is, right? Money where their mouth is, right? I was a kid, I heard it. I was like, what does that mean? Just look it up, son. We didn't have Google, by the way. I had to walk to the library. Okay, so, yeah, but I do have other names of prospective ones. The only one that because I keep people's names private, although Mary Talon, we've talked openly and she said, yes, I will help. I don't know what position specifically, if she's on the task force. I'd rather her be the head of the Texas Medical Board so that she could get rid of them from that part, fire all of them. You ever watch Yellowstone? Yeah. All right, you remember when Dutton became governor and he walked into the staff? Reenactment, okay? We're gonna fire them all. I mean, if they're not doing the right thing. We don't want to create disruption, but maybe sometimes disruption is good. Okay, sir.
I want to reel this back a little bit.
Yes, sir.
What is your game plan? We got 20 weeks before the primary.
Mhm.
And so what is your plan of attack? How are you going to get there? I appreciate what you're going to do when you get in there,
Exactly.
but how are you going to get in there?
This is exactly the question we have to have because we need everyone to mobilize. When I said unite the clans, that means put people to work. That means enlisting people, right? So you got to get on docpchambers.org if you want to help out and volunteer. There's a volunteer site. And there's a lady down there. She's running it. She's done this before. She stepped out of her GOP position in Hayes County to help us do this. So we'll put you either to work or you can help by giving $18.36 times a lot of you because it's 1836. The year is important, or 1836. But it takes money to put diesel in the truck for me to go. But can I go to 254 counties in that time? No. And I've been to a lot already, right? It's just the way it is. A governor starts his race the day he becomes governor. But a guy like me comes in and we're doing a 400, right? That's just the way this works. So for me, witty ideas and such in the geofencing side of the world, to get information out to the right people at the right time to get at least 1.5 million people or 1,200,000 to vote for us in the primary, because the last one was about 1.5 million, maybe 1.8 out of the 18.6 million that voted. And that's all we need. We just got to mobilize that many, but we've got to make it too big to steal. So there is a plan, and it is underway, and that's why I'm driving all night. 17 hours last night.
I'm Jackie Lopez, Precinct Chair 408 for the Republican Party. We have seen a silent invasion of ideologies that are incompatible with our Constitution between the Islamic compounds and illegal compounds at the colony. What is your plan to address this silent invasion of people who are already here?
Right. This is a obviously I speak to Mr. Holman. I talk to him, and actually our remnant ministry team was started because of him. The first donation came from Border 911 to help us get started once he vetted us and he knew our friends. That's a federal job, but it's the governor's job description to protect the citizens of Texas. So it requires some innovation. And the innovation looks like this. Do you remember a guy named Joe Arpaio? Okay. And he had prison camps that were out there in the desert. All right. So I am in contact with and have been in contact with people that build the border facilities for all the military department. I know them because I helped build them, right, as far as planning from the operational side. And so that was putting us down there, uniformed people working. Now DPS and Border Patrol, they hire somebody else. But for me, like DeSantis has his alligator thing, right? We go out to the Big Bend. We find an area that we can build. They get air conditioning. We're not going to make them live in tents with no air conditioning. But we'll have a place to take the worst, the high value targets. It doesn't matter whether feds come in or not, right? Because we have the capacity to do that as a governor to pass. I want you to write this down. House Bill 4914. Okay, this is going to be instrumental to the answer to that question, because we don't have the manpower right now to do with what we have, nor does the federal government. That's the problem. ICE is not being used properly because it's not ICE itself. It's the cooperation of the sheriffs in different counties that have different flavors and different ideas. So when DeSantis, I hate to follow Florida once again, but we're going to have to, and say every sheriff in the state of Texas will be derelict of duty if they don't support an ICE operation, right? Period. Now, House Bill 4914 has been across the desk of the governor. I won't say I was instrumental. I helped not to write it, but to supply the information for it. It is to build the state guard up to back where it should be. Right? The state guard is more like a civil affairs unit right now. If there's a hurricane, they show up with sandwiches and it's good, right? They do stuff, they help, blankets, that's good. But the state guard, which came from the lineage of Bowie in the Alamo, he'd probably be rolling over in his grave right now if he knew how it was being used, right? The other side of the house was with Travis, and that was the Washington on the Brazos unit, which became now the Texas National Guard. So the state guard, if we build that up, you take former law enforcement, former military, and say, do you want to go back to work on a volunteer basis? You're not under Title 10, which is a federal title that says you're active duty. You're not under Title 32, which says you're in the National Guard, and you could be pulled on active duty, as we saw just happen recently, where 600 Texans are heading out of the state for a little while to go to Portland and to Chicago. So now you have the ability to have your state force that provides that regional stability, if you will. So if Sheriff Coe calls me, Brad Coe down there in Kenny, and says, hey, Doc, can you send me, 300 pipe hitters from your state guard? I'm in trouble down here. I got 6 deputies, and I'm looking at 12,500 Venezuelans, Tren de Aragua. I was there when it happened. 12,500 came across the border in 24-hour period. I was there when 18,000 Haitians showed up at Del Rio. Y'all remember the videos, like the horse thing and all the highway patrols coming in? There were 40 of us on the border when that happened, and they told us to hold them back. 40 of us, because we knew they were coming. We stood our post until we got run over, right? But we held our post. If they saw me on video, what we were doing, it would have been a lot worse than just slapping somebody with a whip. I mean, we were fighting for our lives. I had a dog with me just to keep from people running over us. You don't see that on the news. Our citizens, soldiers, and state guards should not have rules of engagement that are written so weak that allows them to get run over. An invasion is an invasion. While I was on Operation Lone Star, if we got shot at by the Mike side, which is Mexico, if we got shot at by cartel guys, here's our rule of engagement. Get in your Humvee and drive away. Do not return fire. Get in your Humvee and drive away. It's up armored, you'll be safe. William Barrett Travis would be rolling over in his grave on that one. I told my men, you protect yourselves and I'll take the hit. Right? Because that's how we win. That's how we protect ourselves. Anyway, long story short, not to make it longer, is those things are action items. And a House Bill 4914, guess what? Day one, executive order. Because it was capable of going to his desk. It just never got a committee to go back as an executive order. Right? It has to come out of committee. But that's how we roll as action.
All right, wasn't that great, everybody? Let's thank Doc Chambers for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. Okay, thanks, Doc. So when I read Doc's bio, Doc, you deployed to the disaster on the Guadalupe. At the same time, a lot of people don't know that Marietta deployed as well with an outfit called United Rescue Alliance, my wife. She went down there. And so they were working, and the conditions that she described were terrible. And it was hot, no power, mud, you can stink. And they were trying to clean up people's houses down there along the Guadalupe River. She's down there. They finally, after working a lot of days nonstop, they took a break and they went to a place called the Coming King Prayer Garden in Kerrville. Some of you may have been there. Are you aware of it? So it's a prayer garden with a big open cross on top that overlooks Kerrville. They went up there to pray and kind of take a break. And while they were there, the artist that sculpted all of these beautiful statues in the prayer garden met them there. And he appreciated the fact that they were trying to help the people recover down there along the Guadalupe River. And so his name is Max Greiner. He's out of Houston. He had sculpted a massive statue in the prayer garden. It's called the Divine Servant. And he gave each one of these relief workers, while they were there after their prayer meeting, a pin that depicts the Divine Servant. Well, when Marietta got back here to Hood County, She said, "Look what I got, honey." And I immediately took that sucker right off of her. I said, "I got to have that." But I had to have it for a reason. When I saw it, it just touched my heart because it really depicts, I think, the heart that you're expressing. And so what I did is after I got hers, I put it on my lapel and I wear it constantly now. I went down there and I bought the remainder of their supply of these pins. I sure did. And the reason that I did that is because I think that more politicians have to have the mindset of Christ washing Peter's feet as depicted in John 13. That is the divine servant. If we could get back to that mindset with our politicians, we wouldn't have any of these worries to deal with. They would be servant hearts. And so I'm believing as I give these out to politicians that when they put this pin on their lapel, that they'll be reminded of who they truly are. That is the divine servant. So I want to give you one of these. It says on the outside, it says, "Whoever acknowledges me before men, I will also acknowledge him before my Father in heaven." It's from Matthew 10, but it depicts Jesus washing Peter's feet. He is the divine servant. I want to thank you for being a servant heart, and we look forward to working with you. Thanks for coming tonight. Doc Chambers.